Your Philadelphia Eagles are 1-0. 1-0 after beating the Dallas Cowboys on home turf, raising the banner and kicking the season off in a nail-biting win. But the real question coming off of that win is what happens at cornerback 2. And I believe we've already got our answer, and it has been staring at us in the face for quite some time now. So we're going to go all over that. I've been preaching it all off season if you've been in tune to these streams. If not, buckle up. It's going to be a good one. We're going to go over that. And of course, the game itself and some news from the rest of the NFL after a very chaotic week one. So welcome to the Outside Insider, where it's time to break down who will be starting at CB2 in week 2. All right, we're back. So we've got a lot to get through. Okay, let's start with the very top, where the Eagles made a pretty surprising move coming out of week one. Once the dust has settled, Monday arrived. They headed down to the NovaCare complex, and there was a new member of the Eagles working out with the team. And that man wasn't named by the veteran of Mike Hilton, a cornerback that has been around the NFL for a while, of course, formerly of the Steelers. He's done some pretty serviceable, cornerback play during his tenure. And the interesting thing about Hilton is he's primarily been a slot cornerback. He's been a nickel DB for about as long as I can remember, which would then beg the question, if the Eagles are working out a nickel corner, someone that is in Cooper DeJean's spot, are we going to see a shift? Now, this is something I said months ago. We can go back to before the NFL draft where I was saying, I think there's a chance Cooper DeJean moves to safety. I think that's the most logical spot. You now look at, I think, what we've seen this offseason where they've moved him around a little bit. He's had some experience at that second safety spot. They seem to be fairly settled with what they've seen currently from the likes of Drew McCuber alongside Reed Blankenship. So they're happy to kind of let the youth develop under there alongside Sidney Brown's chaos. And you've then got this weird juxtaposition at CB2 where Adoree Jackson has this great deep speed. He's a proven veteran. He's been in the division a while, and you know what you're getting from him. And then you've got Kelee Ringo, who on paper should be a dream boundary corner. He's young. It's his third year under Vic Fangio. Very few people have his length and his athleticism. It's a rare blend that you just don't see from many outside cornerbacks. And none of them have set the world on fire, to a point where we even saw some Roe Jacorian Bennett snaps, and they didn't go very well either. So the Eagles have to do something. And the most logical answer to me right now, in a pinch, and I don't mean forever, I just mean in a pinch until maybe, whether it's a few set plays, whether it's in certain matchups, the same as it would be at that safety spot, is move Cooper DeJean outside. If the Eagles' go-to coming off week one is to bring in a veteran nickel corner to see how he fares, either they're really concerned with the depth behind DeJean, or they're thinking, well, look, Jacorian Bennett's not set the world alight. That experiment isn't panning out. The Adoree Jackson experiment is what we thought it was, which is that he is a fringe starting corner, a talent that bridges a gap until Kelee Ringo is ready. And they realize that, again, they need someone that can start right away, get going, and he's not that. So you leave Ringo out there. You've got Bennett struggling. Jackson is what we thought he was. You move Mike Hilton in, who, again, proven commodity at the slot, can hold the fort down for a while in it's an easier position than boundary. And people seem to forget that Cooper DeJean, through the majority of his career at Iowa, was a boundary corner. This is someone that's 6'1", 205 pounds, run a good 40-yard dash, plenty of experience on the outside. We saw flutters of it, I believe, in his rookie year, like the occasional snap, nothing gargantuan. There's no reason why they can't experiment with that. If the one thing that separated Cooper DeJean from every safety in that class he came out of was his versatility, because let's not forget, he came out of it as safety. And when you looked at the tape, what we saw at Iowa, it was a lot of boundary. It was a lot of nickel stuff. And then he got injured in camp in his rookie year. They brought him in, and they wanted to say, look, let's keep it simple. We don't want to overload him with information. He's just come back from injury. He's missed a chunk of camp. We'll put him in the nickel because that's where he's played most recently, and then we'll see what he does after. If that now is at a point where you go, well, where is he most effective? You've got a Swiss Army knife, someone that can play both safety spots, the nickel and boundary. He's one of your most impactful players defensively. You want him on the field where he's going to be at his most valuable. And if right now there is one key weakness on that field, which is CB2, it just makes sense to move him over. What really confounded me against the Cowboys just was the fact that Quinyon Mitchell wasn't shadowing CD Lamb. And I genuinely expected there to be a lot of air traffic towards that CB2 spot, which there ultimately was. I didn't expect a lot of it to go in CD Lamb's direction. That felt like, whether it was an oversight, whether it was by design, it just felt odd that Quinyon was just sat on his side of the field. That's absolutely fine. And they're just willing to let receivers move around and then give Adoree Jackson tough matchups. You're going to give, Jacorian Bennett, the 1-0, 2 matchups that he had, they're unfavorable. And outside of that, you've got deep threats aside. You take CD Lamb out and you've still got George Pickens, who can cause problems over the middle or on the outside. You've got a deep burner that can cause problems. And if it's Adoree Jackson, he's got the speed and not a lot else will stay with him and can't make stuff around the catch, which is exactly what we saw in week 1. Cooper DeJean at this point, I think, is your best bet at a player that not only has a lot of experience on the outside from his days at Iowa, but is easily one of your most valuable players defensively that should be, in line to contribute more. And he's fine in the slot. He's a great slot cornerback. What's more important for a defense right now that also has a weakness at safety? Do you just want to shore up that middle bit and have a slot corner that can play the run? Or do you want to take away someone's WR2, take out that Z receiver, and you force, if they're going over the middle, to deal with Zach Bourne, to deal with Jihad Campbell, who had a pretty stellar rookie debut by, I think, all estimations. It's one of those things where, realistically, the safety spot is not going to be challenged as heavily as CB2, because over the middle, you just do have more traffic, and you've got good traffic in the way of those linebackers. On the outside, on that island with this defense, you need your best player available. Right now, that is Cooper DeJean. And I do not blame the Eagles at all just for seeing what other nickel corners are out there. This isn't to say that Cooper DeJean is going to start week 2 on the boundary, but I do think that it's purposeful that instead of looking at the free agent market, instead of looking at trades for a boundary corner, the first thing that team has done is gone, let's get in a veteran nickel who can hold the fort for a bit, the same way that they've done multiple times before under Howie Roseman. Let's move Cooper DeJean to the right, and let's just see what he can do. And if that patches the bleeding a bit until they can get confident in Ringo, until they can maybe find a way to, lessen the, negative impact that Adoree Jackson would have. Because you're going into a run of games now, into that back half of the season, that, CB2 spot is going to get a lot of traffic in that direction. Now, week 2 will be fine. I have no concerns at all against the Chiefs. It's the same as I didn't in the Super Bowl, the same as I didn't when they first played in the Super Bowl, the year before that, or the year before that even. I just think that realistically, DeJean is the best bet right now. And it'd be silly not to try and find a nickel corner that can come in. You move Coop outside, and we see what we can do. We've got a comment here from, that's just ruined everything. That's ruined my day. That's a pain in the ass. I think the fact he doesn't have a team anymore, Zach, says an awful lot, is what I would say. I think the fact he currently doesn't have a team says everything we need to. Maybe they'll put him at cornerback. He can't be worse than Adoree Jackson, right? But we've got over the main talking point. We'll come back to that, I'm sure, as a few people cycle, in and out of this stream. But let's get to the game itself. So the Eagles come away with a big win over Dallas. Few major talking points. One of them was cornerback, as we said. The other one would have been the wide receiver room. I think there were a lot of fans that were quite miffed about the fact that AJ didn't get any targets, like Smitty barely got any looks. And I think, if anything, it's a positive, purely because of how Dallas played that game. Now, there was a fantastic stat, and I don't want to misquote it because it was genuinely something that has gone. It was on my radar. Okay, my assumption coming out of that game was it was by design. If you're going to try and key in on these, superstar wideouts, it's going to open things up in the middle. And the Eagles show that even if you take away some of their best options, they can still beat you. It doesn't matter. Jalen Hurts looked the best rushing the ball that we've seen for, I would say, at least a year and a half. We didn't see much of it in 2020, 2024. We saw a very I hate to say Lamar Jackson-esque, but in the way that Lamar has become much more of a refined pocket passer. We saw the same from Jalen in 2024, where he was much happier to sit in the pocket, to climb the ladder, and to make those more challenging throws over the middle. This year, there's a clear push for him to just take off and run, to just burn defenses and really just bring those eyes back to him. Because previously, I think with the first year under Saquon, it was Jalen's there. We can't leave him unaccounted for, but the main threat is Saquon. Like, if Jalen runs off and gets 6 yards, brilliant, but Saquon's the main problem. This year, off the jump, within 2 drives, where, the Cowboys score instantly, the Eagles immediately respond. A lot of it's Jalen on the ground. Then the Cowboys come back. The Eagles do it again. And there was this real push almost from Jalen to have the team on his back, to run when he has to, and to not be afraid of taking off, to not be afraid to go either side, by the way, to roll out left, to roll out right, get away from pressure, put himself in good situations. This was a decision-making masterclass from the quarterback. So I look at that game, and I don't see a problem with Smitty or AJ not getting the targets, partly because of the confidence I have in both of those guys, right? They've now got their long-term deals, they're Super Bowl champions, they've achieved a lot of accolades, from whether it's All-Pro or Pro Bowls or whatever. They're both at the top of their game. They don't need any validation. Catches are nice. I think we've moved past that point. There was definitely a concern at the beginning of last year, if not maybe towards the end of last year, where if AJ wasn't getting his targets, he'd throw a bit of a paddy. The diva mindset that some alleged he had would come out, and there'd be questions asked. I think we're past that. I think we're really past. Once AJ debunked all of that noise and showed just how of a true leader that he is, I've never once felt, wavered that if AJ doesn't get his, it's going to be absolute pandemonium in the locker room. Not that I ever thought that to begin with, but AJ is just a different breed. He's just very quiet in the way he goes about things off the field and very animated on the field, as a lot of players are. But I think AJ to not get those targets, I don't care. Like, whether he puts up 100 yards, whether he puts up 200 yards or 10, if the Eagles win, I don't think anyone cares how it looks. And that game to me was a testament of it. That if everyone is truly on the same page and they understand that to get back to the Super Bowl, these rifts that can come in after a Super Bowl year where that ego is a little bit higher and the stakes are a little bit higher and the pressure's a little bit higher too, the rifts can happen a lot easier, Like, the tighter that string gets, the easier it is to snap. And if the Eagles can agree, we don't let it. We just keep it loose. We keep it free-flowing. Whoever gets the ball, as long as we move it down the field. And if everyone's on that page, it doesn't matter. And that's where I'm kind of at with these receivers. All of that to say, Corey Nido, Philly Sports Network's lead Eagles writer, he was at the game as media down at Lincoln Financial Field, put out an article today just kind of going into some of the question marks, going over cornerback 2, going over the wide receivers and the linebackers and stuff, and just bringing some really interesting stats to the frame. One of the things he said, and I want to highlight this, okay? So these are Corey's words. I'll just read these 2 paragraphs to you. I'll share the screen and highlight them in green so it doesn't look like I am literally just spouting. Can I put that here? Let's have a look. Cool. So highlighted in green, because why not? Going through the All-22 film, there were definitely some plays that Brown was open or he was Jalen's first read. However, a good majority of Brown's routes featured him lining up outside the numbers and breaking inside. The Cowboys were ready, and while also having a linebacker and cornerback shade him to create basically a bracket for Hurts to go unavailable. This is the big bit, though. In addition, the Cowboys, who played man coverage at an above-average rate last season, changed it up in week 1 and played zone on all 33 of Hurts' dropbacks per next-gen stats. Brown typically has more success when he can outmuscle a cornerback in one-on-one matchups or getting inside leverage on smaller players in the secondary. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do that if everything's cornered off, okay? So, to me, I think that's a really good way of viewing it. You've got this combination of the Cowboys trying to eliminate the threat that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith bring. And then you've also got Jalen Hurts being more willing to run, trying to protect the football as he did all of last year, keep the rock safe, give it to Saquon. It's a high percentage throws you take. You leave anything low percentage unless you've got full confidence you can make it, like we saw with a deep shot to Jahan Dotson. And you just end up with this perfect storm where well, if AJ's unavailable and we're on these reads, but it's not quite there because he's breaking in between a corner and a linebacker, or there's a defensive end dropping back, you're in a spot on a bind where you're like, well, I'm not making that risk. Like, this is a tight game. It's a divisional game. It's week 1. It's sloppy. There's a lot of flags. There's a lot of emotion in this game, as we saw very early on. Let's just keep it safe. Let's just keep it safe and win. And that's what they did. So I don't really listen to, a lot of that noise that we've seen predominantly on Twitter about the AJ and the Smitty, targets. If this is sustained 4 to 5 weeks in the season, and after 4 weeks, they've got 3 targets and they have a combined 72 yards, we've got an issue and it might need addressing. But if the team are winning and everything's going smoothly and the players are happy, does it really matter? The answer to me is no, especially when the Eagles are just coming off of a Super Bowl season. They're the team that everyone's now circled in red. The focus on that offense is going to be so much higher. You've got a new coordinator. There's going to be some changes. There's this just weird mix of so many variables that you're not going to expect to come out of the gate and it go perfectly and win. All that matters is that last bit. They did exactly that. And I think we can just leave it, get into week 2, where they should have a bit of an easier matchup against Dallas in terms of the secondary. Kansas City in terms of the secondary. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. Birdbrain says, as someone who was at the game, AJ didn't look healthy, which is very interesting. I mean, he obviously did have that training camp setback. I'm not sure. I mean, I've not heard anything about it in a long time, so I can't speak on it, or, there's no inside info and say, yeah, he's great or anything like that. But that is an interesting take, and maybe that's why they worked out, Quez Watkins today, by all accounts, which isn't something I ever wanted to read, or I thought we were past the Quez Watkins era, but apparently not. We'll talk about the Jalen Carter stuff as well. I appreciate I've not done a stream since Wednesday, it would have been. So, hang on a minute. Right, I'll get to Team. Sorry, Team will just drop a comment. We'll get to that in a sec. And we'll do it now, and then we'll get into the Jalen Carter stuff. This will be a quick hitter, I'm sure. Hey, Liam, I don't know if you've seen it, but it looks like the Rams are going to miss both their starting guards for their Week 3 game versus you. Can you tell your front four to do the Niners a favor in 2 weeks? I'll level with you. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference given how you played against Seattle. I mean, in fairness, yes, you lost George Kittle and that sucked. It ruined my bet because I had him over 4.5 receptions and he had 4 when he just crashed out. But I don't know. The Niners didn't look convincing at all in that game. Like I think if San Francisco were mildly competent, I think they'd have won that game. It just looked like a little bit misfiery offensively. I mean, we'll try. We'll beat the wheels off the Rams. I just don't know if that's gonna help much necessarily. But all right. But while Timo cooks up a response and tells you I'm categorically wrong, and the Niners wiped the floor with with Seattle. We'll get to Jalen Carter because that is one of the hot topics coming off this. And I think that now the dust has settled with that, now we've seen the other viewing angles, people have certainly eased up on Jalen and, been a bit more understanding of his stance. I kind of haven't, although I wasn't necessarily overly aggressive with it. I think my initial takeaway when we just saw the angle of him spitting on Dak was, A, what are you doing? B, Dak has obviously said something to rile him up. And C, you're a leader of this football team. All right, you're the best young player. Like the obvious stuff. Now we've seen the second angle where Dak, we don't know what was said. We don't know whether the spit was at Jalen Carter, whether it was coincidental and Jalen's got wound up and Dak's gone, what's this guy going? What you on about? And then Jalen spat and took it personally. We don't know those ins and outs. All we can say is that Jalen, for better or worse, was clearly aggravated by Dak Prescott in a divisional game where Dak looked to have antagonized him. The big thing there, forget what the act was, forget that it happened. You cannot, as the best defensive player on that team, as a young guy that is not only going into, a big couple of years in terms of your NFL future and how much money you get paid for you and your family for the next 4 or 5 seasons, you can't do that. You have to understand, if you go out and you're out of that game and Jordan Davis now has to play 80% of snaps, Amaro Ojomo is playing a lot of snaps, you can't do that. If that was A.J. Brown, if that was, Devontae Smith, if it was Jalen Hurts, it would be every national headline out there. But because it's Jalen Carter, I think because of the unfortunate reputation that he has established, partly whether it's involuntary, whether it's fair, I don't know. That's for, it's subjective, I think. But because of who it was seen as a more normalized reaction for him. And, oh, Jalen, what have you done? Come on. That shouldn't be the case. Everyone on that team should be held to the exact same standard. And when we're talking about a leadership group of guys like Saquon, of guys like Jalen, of Smitty, of Landon Dickerson, on defense, you can look at someone like Zach Bourne, who's just got a captaincy this year. You go across that defense. I understand it's a very young group, but people are still looking up to you as one of kind of the veterans on that defense now. We're not talking about a player that is a rookie and he's coming all hot and emotional. He's gone past that. He's now a Super Bowl champion, all right? With the success, with great power comes great responsibility. You are the best player on that defense. And regardless of what he has said to you, whether it is the most personal, vindicative, awful thing in history, you have to let it go and do the play on the field. If you look at someone like Jalen Ramsey, how many players has he got into trouble over his career by just running the gift of the gab? How many times has Brandon Graham done it? You know that people are going to try and go, as soon as you're that good, like Jalen Carter is, people are going to come for you, all right? Like, heavy is the head that wears the crown. They're always going to try and do whatever they can to get you off that field. And if you're dumb enough to bite at that, and to do something as egregious as spitting at someone, not only does it show a complete lack of maturity, but you worry about that. Like, again, that defensive line, the veterans are Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, but by a year. Like, Jordan Davis is in front by a year. Like, there's not much in it, but to any of them, like, they're the guys that the younger players, the rookies of this year, the Drew McCubers and such, are going to be looking at. It's unacceptable. Like, again, I don't care what the reason was. I don't care what Dak said. I don't care really the extent of what he did, because if Dak did wile him up, fair enough. But you have to have the fortitude, the discipline to pull away from that. And if I'm honest, what shocked me more is the fact that this isn't Jalen Carter, the guy who had red character flags coming out of Georgia, playing in Las Vegas. He's not playing in Cleveland. He's not playing in Miami. He's not playing in Los Angeles. He's playing in Philadelphia with a leadership group of some of the most high character guys you could find anywhere in the NFL. And that is still happening. That's a concern. That's your best player. That has to be like that kind of stuff. It's not the first time that he's done something questionable and you've ended up raising your eyebrows a bit and gone, he's got to settle a bit here. Like, there's a raw like anger in there that has to just be tamed. It's like a raw beast. But that's the most extreme that level's gone. And I think we're at a point now where hopefully other players, his peers, I'm sure Vic Fangio and the rest of the coaching staff would have pulled him aside and said, look, you could have been absolutely right to feel the way you did, but you were absolutely wrong to let your reaction be one of immediate explosiveness and not just channel that and put it on the field. You're a professional athlete. The key word there is professional, and there was nothing professional about what Jalen done. And I'd like to think that there won't be a suspension, although I think it would be kind of warranted to really hammer it into him that this kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. And I think Dak should get, if there is a suspension, Dak should get a warning or a fine or something along those lines as well. But at the end of the day, the main thing here, again, is if Jalen Hurts did that, it would be national stories. They'd be calling for him to be benched. They would be calling for suspensions. If it was Saquon, if it was Cooper DeJean, if it was Quinn Yom, if it was anyone else, it would be outrage. And because it's Jalen Carter, it's almost softened a bit because of the reputation he has. And I think, if anything, it should be worse because it's down to the coaching staff and his peers to turn him into a better person. Like, forget the athlete, forget the player. It's a better person. And it's those lessons, like the way you carry yourself. You look at the way that Jalen carries himself, like you couldn't find a more model man on the planet in terms of the way you approach life to model someone after. And yeah, it's just annoying that Jalen Carter still has that there. So hopefully that gets ironed out. And that's kind of where I'm at on that situation. Back to Timor, who has responded about the San Francisco 49ers. All I'll say is, if you know anyone that could kick a football between two big yellow sticks, can you send them to... I mean, yeah, might be helpful. I'm shocked the consistently upstanding citizen and former Georgia Bulldog Jalen Carter had a disgusting moment on a football field. No one could have predicted it. Well, yeah, but this is what I'm saying though, right? Like, if you are it's a really, really bad example. And I don't mean this in the literal sense. But if you've got a troublemaker at school that is just, got behavioral issues and you put him in the army, you assume at some point that to a degree gets ironed out. Like whether you can go down the rabbit hole of if it's like ADHD or whatever, but that's not what that analogy is about. It's more like you would learn life lessons of discipline, what's acceptable, what's not, respect, like basic core values. Again, not a direct correlation, but I think in terms of like, again, you've gone from a college athlete on top of the world to an NFL roster. Now you're a Super Bowl champion, and every step up that ladder has come more responsibility. You assume that with that comes a maturity to handle it, and it just hasn't. Whether that is a lack of attention to detail on the Eagles side of it or not, we'll see one day. I'm sorry, Doug. We're playing hard to get with your notifications. I apologize. We're keeping you in the dark. I did set it up late, which is my bad. But I hope you're well. Eagles are 1-0, so I'm sure we're doing blissfully well. And we'll move on to the talk about the Chiefs. But if any of you are hopping in late and you haven't been notified and you do want to go over anything that we've discussed previously, so the Cooper DeJean theory that I have, obviously then what we've just discussed, which was the Jalen Carter incident, or we can pivot now to the chat about the Chiefs, which to me I think is really enticing because Kansas City, the Eagles have a chance to do something very, very special, I think, very special. I'm going to write an article on this tomorrow, so I don't want to try and yap too much and spoil that, and then I'll probably do a bit of a deeper dive on Wednesday's stream. But I think the Eagles have a really, really unique opportunity in week 2 to end the Chiefs dynasty. And that's, you're going to go, what? But how? They've already did that by beating them in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are still Super Bowl contenders. And if you look at their playoff record and how many Super Bowls they've been to in the last 6 years, if you look at the playoff games, the AFC championships, if you look at just the records and stuff, like this team is still kind of on that edge now, right? It's had its peak and it's falling off and it's still kind of there, one fluke playoff run and another ring and the Taylor Swift phenomenon. And we're all back to the Chiefs hate watching again. The Eagles have a chance to do something so special, so beautiful in essence, that is to rip it down just as the wallpaper is getting damp. Just as things are starting to sour, just tear the house down. You've just beaten the Chiefs to a degree that very few teams have during the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes era. Very few teams have come close to that. To do that on the biggest stage when you're underdogs and just absolutely decimate them, right? They then go into week 1 with a roster that is somehow weaker than it was last year, by the way. The receiving room is just atrocious. There is no one there. Not a single Chiefs receiver instills any bit of confidence in me. The defense is now, as Duck says, wildly emotional. We'll get to that. And there's just, I don't know, it just feels off. There's something about this Chiefs team that feels off. They then lose to the Chargers in a game where Justin Herbert, and I said this to my friend during the game, until the Josh Allen game last night, it's the first game I can remember in a while where a quarterback has taken over in a way where he hasn't done something exceptional. Okay, I'll take it back in that regard. Like, Justin Herbert was great, consistently great from start to finish. There was nothing out of this world. Right, he wasn't like blowing everyone away. There were no like mind-blowing sidearm Patrick Mahomes throws, no lethal runs like Josh Allen can pull off, no like Lamar Jackson-esque trickery. It was just I would view it like a Brexit quarterback, right? Someone that is just back there making throw after good read, occasionally take it on himself and puts a nail in the coffin by sliding, staring someone down, leg in the air, ball up here. Chef's kiss. It was just a pure quarterback, brilliant performance that, some will say has been a long time coming. So the Chiefs are then rocked, okay? They weren't expected to lose that game. They've lost the Super Bowl. They lose week 1. If Kansas City go 0-2 and they get twatted by the Eagles again, twice in the space of 6-8 months here, how can they come back from that? I don't think they can. We're talking about a Kansas City team, and there's another stat here. I'm going to have to dig this one up super quickly because it was in our work group chat earlier, and I wanted to save this for the stream because it just was everything that I was talking about. If we scroll up just a little, it is the fact that Patrick Mahomes has never lost 3 games in his entire career. Never lost 3 games in a row. The Eagles not only could be the first team to buck that trend, but to account for 2 of those losses. And then you look, winning cures everything. The Chiefs have been like that for a while, and it has been just pure brilliance from Mahomes keeping them afloat. I don't think Travis Kelce's done anything of note in the last year and a half or so, really. The receivers are absolutely dross. The running game is bizarre with Pacheco not really. Pacheco is just like a slightly faster Miles Sanders to some degree. The defense is always seems great on paper. Then they're kind of like Washington, where they're all getting a bit older. They did draft pretty well, but we'll see how that goes. Again, Mahomes has never lost 3 games in his career. 2 of those games could be against the Eagles. Is there a more fitting way to end a dynasty, to signify the end of an era, than, you can easily make the argument that the Eagles win the Super Bowl, the Chiefs go into the regular season, and they go, right, they beat us once, it ain't happening again, we're out for revenge, we're going to set the record straight, we get our season back on track 1-1, and off they go. The run continues. Kansas City aren't done. They've just beat the Super Bowl champions. And you can argue that road can go on for another year or 2. If the Eagles beat them, and I don't just mean 27-24, I mean beat them like they did in the Super Bowl, I don't think the Chiefs come back from that. I think that team is then washed. I think things fall apart. I think Travis Kelce starts jumping up and down and like headbutting things and shouting at people the way he normally does when he crashes out. And I think this receiving room falls apart. I think the secondary falls apart. I think Andy Reid starts to wobble. We haven't really seen that from him yet. I think that I just see it. It's just on the horizon. And the Eagles to have the opportunity to, again, not just end what has been one of the most incredible records in recent memory, that a quarterback has never lost 3 consecutive games. And he's been in that league since, 2018? Never lost 3 consecutive games. Ever. And the Eagles can account for 2 of them, with one of them being in a Super Bowl and the other one just after the LA Chargers upset them. You can't, again, fathom a possible better way to end that dynasty. And I'm here for it. I'm all here for it. I can't stand the Chiefs. I never thought I'd say that, because I remember when Doug Peterson came over and I started going back and looking at Alex Smith tape at the time and, watching that rise and Andy Reid being there, and then you get Patrick Mahomes, and like the rise was fun, and then the Tyreek Hill era before he got chaotic was fun, and then it just became mundane, like the Pats dynasty did, because that's what dynasties do, and then you appreciate them after. And we will look back fondly on this era one day, as if we're being unbiased fans talking about the NFL to our grandkids. But every dynasty has an end. Every civilization has an end. The Romans had an end. Okay, it happens. And the Eagles can easily be the team that are so good across the board to just put the nail in the coffin. You lose the Super Bowl. You lose to the Chargers in week 1 in a game you absolutely should have won. And then you lose to the team that broke your heart in your Super Bowl dreams. This is the equivalent of breaking up with your girlfriend, going out on the lash with your boys, hitting a bar and seeing her just getting off with some guy, hands all over him, drinks being poured all over. Like, it's that. That's what we're talking. Like, there is no coming back from that. You just have to go home, put on some Taylor Swift, unironically, and just cry your eyes out. The Chiefs are on the edge, in my opinion, of utter collapse, and it'll be at the hands of the Eagles. And I can't think of a more fitting way. So there's my take on next week's game, without diving too much into matchups and all of that good stuff. We'll get to a few comments. I'll come back to the Jalen Carter thing in a minute, Duck. Timor says Kansas City could have done with the wide receiver Sky Moore with all his injuries. They could have done with an Anaya Smith, to be honest, or a John Hightower. But who am I to grade talent? It's just nuts. Like, I don't know. I'm not a fan of them. LG are literally asking for the Eagles to bitch slap the Chiefs and then telling them it's over. Yeah, pretty much. Give me the villain era. All right, we've had the hero era of the Eagles, where they were the ones to upset all the people that hated Taylor Swift, which is basically what that Super Bowl was to a general fan that didn't care about the NFL, that Travis Kelce lost, right? But to most NFL fans, it was the Chiefs finally losing and a team finally getting better. And the Eagles, who were upset just, a year beforehand, to come back and to do it again and to get back on track and the year before that even, but to make that, right, clear it all, get to 1-1. and now they meet again in regular. It's too good. Now this time we've had again that magical come up. They get to the Super Bowl after being knocked down. They win it in dominant fashion. Everyone's buzzing. It's the heroic Eagles. It's Saquon's best season ever. Jalen Hurts is Super Bowl MVP. He was written off for so long, and now everyone loves him. And Devontae Smith's brilliant. And look at Cooper DeJean. He's got a podcast now, a Reed Blankenship, and that's amazing. How lovely and wholesome. Now, let's just beat the piss out of them again. And let's just get nasty. And let's just end this dynasty and get that Philadelphia ick back where it's like, this is a mean team and they don't care about feelings. They don't care if they're liked or hate. They just want to win. All that matters is winning at any cost. And they just decimate the Chiefs. I'm getting angry talking about it. They're going to decimate the Chiefs and it's going to be beautiful. And there we are. Kelsey done nothing of note. I think a certain Instagram post says otherwise, buddy. I can't tell if you're on about the engagement one or the one where he just absolutely sprinted into Xavier Worthy at the speed of sound, to be honest with you. But, you know, game's the game. Speaking of Miles Sanders, what was going through your mind when Bourne hawked him down? If I'm honest, I would say similar to the kind of emotion I just spoke about the Chiefs' disdain, but in reverse. The idea of a Miles Sanders revenge game became too real in that moment where he looked like a certain breakaway runner. And for Zach Bourne to do what Zach Bourne does and just go, not today, not any day. It was never going to happen. Let's knock you back down a peg, sunshine. You're not that guy. You're not him. You're not Saquon. The best Penn State running back of all times over there, mate. You got nothing on him. All right. Just take the L. Go back to being behind, Hubbard in Carolina. You don't belong on a Dallas team that is fielding you here as a backup. It's just not working out, buddy. Off you go. It was a thanks for playing. It was Zach Bourne sprinting up at the speed of sound, bringing him down, and just going, thanks for playing. And you just couldn't ask for more than that. I'm amazed that Miles Sanders had somewhat of an. I think the first run he broke off was agonizing, and you could just tell. But although he did lose speed pretty quick, he broke into the open field and then just stopped. It felt like, and everyone caught him. So I don't know. Kind of validating that he is who we always thought he was, at least the rational among us. I know there are Eagles fans that were obsessed with him purely because he played for Penn State, which isn't even a Philly school anyway, but we'll leave that for now because we'll say that Saquon's a hometown kid. You get where I'm going. Anyway, it was just kind of validating, kind of funny, and just blissful that in that moment where it did actually matter, and it could have been a huge moment in that game, that Zach Bourne, I was partly concerned, to be honest with you, that Zach Bourne's year last year was exceptional, and no one saw. I didn't see that coming. I knew it'd be good. Didn't it'd be that good. No one saw all pro level. No one would have gone to a sports book and put $100 on Zach Bourne to be an all pro in 2024. However, what I do think is that because of that, you're expecting some kind of regression where he just comes back to being like a baseline starter or like a top 10, top 15 linebacker. That kind of play. Straight back to the top, unchallenged, unparalleled. That's your guy, and he's worth every bit of the money you pay him. And that's the thing with Zach Bourne, is that it hasn't taken very long. We're 1 week into the season, and he made 2 or 3 plays that game that just made you go, and that's why he got the money, and he's worth every bit of that contract. Or a comment like that, and you're just reassured. And there's nothing worse than when the opposite happens, when a player signs a massive extension. They run out onto the field. Look at a James Bradbury, for instance, in his final season in New York, right? As soon as you get the money, you fall off a cliff. Play drops, you're not asked. And you just watch a hero turn into a villain, and it's annoying. And then you're stuck with a fat contract. I think for Zach Bourne to come out and play the way he did and just validate that, no, this was an investment. This wasn't a purchase to keep an elite player here and bank he does it again. This is no, he's here, and we've got a gem, and we have to get behind him. And it was just great. So I'm a big Zach Bourne guy, as you guys know. I'm an anti-Miles Sanders guy, as most of you guys know. And, it was just generational. What have we got next? Swifties only care about the love. They don't care about KC. Hopefully that's the case, although I can see a trend forming. We did end the Pats dynasty. Why not end the Chiefs? Exactly. We can be the Randy Ortons of the NFL, Duck, right? We can be the legend killers. We take down Brady and the Pats. We take down Mahomes and the Chiefs. Who else? Who's next? Who is a dynasty level team? You can argue the Bills after last night, which might have gone down as one of the most cinematic games in history. And my bozo ass fell asleep at half time because I'm an idiot and I despise myself for it. But looking at back this morning, unbelievable play. I would love in another universe, in another lifetime, for the Eagles to be in the AFC, or for there to be some weird NFL realignment where everyone plays everyone once and then the playoffs are the top 6 teams. Like, it would never happen because you'd end up with like a 30-week season and injuries would be through the roof and it's just not feasible. But in some hypothetical universe, what would happen if either A, the Eagles were in the AFC, or B, they had to play every other single team in the NFL? How would you look after the whole season had finished? Where would you rank? And the only unfortunate, I guess, reality of this is that we don't know how good the Eagles are until the Super Bowl in a lot of ways. I think, and I'm hoping this year's a bit different because I think the Packers looked excellent in week 1. Jordan Love was a superstar. Got him on my fantasy. I'm definitely not biased in saying that. There aren't many other teams that did well. The Niners squeaked by a Seahawks team that had no business being that close, and they should have won, in my opinion. The Lions obviously lost to Green Bay. Like, who else in the NFC has actually looked good? You've got the Vikings tonight playing the Bears. Let's just look at the NFL standings in week 1 for a minute, because again, my point is you're just not going to see how good they are until you get to the Super Bowl. The Commanders barely beat the Giants, and this was a Giants team fielding Russell Wilson and just couldn't score. Like, it was a defunct Giants offense that hasn't won week 1 in forever. And even then, it was close into the end. They lost 21-6, and it was close until like the fourth quarter. That was dumb. The Commanders should have wiped the floor with them. The Cardinals looked all right, but again, it was a very, very easy matchup. The Rams looked okay. Defensively looked great. Offense looked wobbly. We haven't seen anything from the Vikings or the Bears yet. The Bucks squeaked by the Falcons. The Panthers and the Saints are a mess. You've got no one in the NFC. No one. So we don't know how good this Eagles team is until they get to the Super Bowl and they face one of the superpowers, which is Lamar Jackson MVP, Josh Allen MVP, Patrick Mahomes former MVP. Joe Burrow hasn't got it yet, but probably will. One of the big 4. You're not going to know. See, I think the Eagles at this rate, and it's very, very early days. I can't sit here in good health and say the Eagles are going to walk to the Super Bowl. I can't see many. The only team after week 1, and again, very presumptuous. A lot can change with injuries and, momentum and that kind of thing. The only team that looked any good in week 1 in the NFC as someone that I would back for a Super Bowl is Green Bay. Outside of that, it was dross. I'm not intimidated by the Commanders. The Niners looked average at very, very best. Who else other than the Cardinals? And even then, they made that look difficult. They should have covered that spread and added 15 points on top of it. I'm amazed they didn't. The Bucks, maybe. Defense looked worse than I thought. The Falcons, maybe. I love what Michael Penis is doing, but defensively, there are still problems. I think the offense has got way better. They seem to finally have a team of young superstars, but defensively is a concern. So I'm just not sold. So anyway, all of this to say, the Eagles really just have they should, in theory, have a clear walk to the championship game, which will likely be against Green Bay. That's your first real test, I think, like in terms of a playoff game. And then, of course, when you get to the Super Bowl, that's when we find out if it's real, how good this team is. And I have no doubt they'll be competitive regardless of who they play. Football news for the chat. Forrest have sacked Nuno. Anyway, no, I'm joking. That's weird. My girlfriend's dad's a Forest fan, so I'm sure he will be feeling an emotion about that, which I can't be bothered to bring up because he doesn't follow Charlton. So, game's a game. Only 3 of us know what 70% of the words in that would mean. Liam, slander is I CBA to find the stats, but we battered the Seahawks. Was it battered? Was it battered? Or was it just the fact that Seattle left a lot on the table? Christian McCaffrey became a human pinball for a bit. I wouldn't say you battered him. I wouldn't go that far. The Seahawks had 3rd and goal about 87 times in that game. I'm pretty sure. The eye in the sky never lies, and the eye in the sky told me that could have easily been a Seahawks win. So That's ignore everything I said. Purdy's injured. I'm going to go cry. Have fun. Have an healthy team. Oh, well, to be fair, I hate to say it, Timor. Purdy being injured. Who's your backup? I actually don't know. My theory is it'll be an instant upgrade, regardless of who it is. And your quarterback is Mac Jones. Yeah, instant upgrade. Instant upgrade. Instant upgrade. So good stuff. Talking with Ty, I was there for sure. Which one? The Seahawks game? Interesting. Look at that. We're pulling in views from all over the place. 49ers. Oh, he was there. Very interesting. Well, nice to see you, Ty. Thank you for hopping into the stream, my friend. Niners need a new quarterback. I will not fall for rage bait. It's Brock Purdy. It's Brock. Come on, mate. It's Brock Purdy. Let's not take the piss. Come on now. Come on. I'm trying not to fall for the rage bait now. Let's not get silly with it. But yeah, I think that's kind of everything from an Eagles standpoint tonight. So I will call it there just because, as you can tell by my red face, a little bit sleep deprived. I don't know where I am at the minute. Didn't the Niners just pay for the QB they have already? Oh, tremendous. Darnold was going to close it. Bosa clutched up. You know, Ty's right, Timor. Look, I think the Seahawks should have won that game. Diabolical they didn't. Was it the Seahawks game where they... Who was it? There was a game last night, and I think it was the Titans and Broncos. Ignore me, when they opted not to punt or not go for the field goal and gave the Titans a shot, and then they ballsed it up anyway. For some reason, I thought that was the Niners. So I wouldn't be surprised. But I agree with Ty. Packers Eagles NFC title game. I think that's going to be a pretty safe bet from now on. But on that note, which is the prediction we will end it on, fellas, it's been a pleasure. The Eagles are 1-0. Cooper DeJean will be your starting boundary corner for week 2. Lock that in as a prediction. It's not in stone. If the Eagles sign Mike Hilton, Cooper DeJean is your new CB2. That's all you need to know. We've got the Chiefs this week. Let's end another dynasty, the second one in what feels like 2 heartbeats. I'm all for it. I think this is going to be a great week of football. Week 1. Oh, we never got to the slap. Okay, whoa, heads up. Hey, stay in your seats. Stay in your seats. Ducker said I never got to the slap comment. Let me go dig it up. What Carter did was disgusting. But a Chiefs player open-handed a slap an opposing player should have been ejected. That's fair. I mean, that's completely agreeable. The difference is officiating is subjective, and unfortunately, one rule for one doesn't carry over to every player in the league because it just is, it changes based on matchup, based on what the refs see, based on the angles. And I don't think the act necessarily of what Carter did is the extreme part. I don't care if he'd have punched Dak Prescott in the face, if he'd spat on him, if he'd have put his fingers up, anything like that. It's still rising to the fact that you're a leader on this team. People are trying to get a rise out of you to get you out of this game or to get you a penalty or whatever it is. And at an age now where you've had 3 years in the NFL, you're a Super Bowl champion, you're looked at as a leader for a team of Georgia players that have been around you and respect you and look up to you, and you spit at an opposing quarterback. I find it's just to me, it's more a sign of there is a real lack of maturity for a player the Eagles are really hoping to lean on for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe, if he gets this big extension. And something like that is going to raise a massive question mark over, you're the player we knew you could be. You're not the person we thought you could be. And this is a team, as we've established, that is so built on leadership with Jalen Hurts, with Landon Dickerson, AJ, Smitty, who become 2 of the most selfless guys on the planet. You can look at the defensively, it's the same thing. I just can't see a world where that behavior is anywhere. It shouldn't be associated with this version of the Eagles. 10 years ago, fine. It'd go, whoa, Jalen. But I think it doesn't matter what Dak said. It doesn't matter how aggravated it was. You do the talking on the field. You don't let it get in your head. You don't risk jeopardizing the team. And he did exactly that. And it did jeopardize the team. And there was a point where I'm sure I wasn't the only one that thought that Jordan Davis looked gassed out there in the second half. I think a couple of the other guys filling in looked a little bit gassed, and they needed their star guy out there, and they needed a rotation to move guys around. And it wasn't there because he let his emotions get the better of him. And that is a temperament issue. It's a maturity issue. And it's something that under this leadership call shouldn't be acceptable under any regard. So that's where I stand on it. I don't really buy the argument of like how disgusting it was and that we should be saying that was a definite ejection. You shouldn't do that to another player. I don't care. The fact he did it, whether it was aggravated or not, is the thing. It's the question mark of the player and the leader and the man, rather than the impact of the spit. Because you haven't hurt Dak's not going to get his butt hurt over the fact he's been spat on, especially if he's egged it on in the first place and did draw first blood in that interaction, which we're never going to really know. Like, Mic'd Up aren't going to release an episode about it. But I think that as a player, you have to, a professional athlete, leave that on the field, just let it be what it is, and just get in where it matters, which is as soon as that whistle goes, as soon as the ball snaps, then you wreak havoc. Then you maybe, get a little chip on him, you get an extra sack, you get a real vicious hit, whatever it is you need to do to get out your system, do it. But you can't risk jeopardizing the team. And again, he could have turned around and twerked at Dak and got a flag. He could have just stuck his fingers up. The act doesn't matter. It's the fact that there was an act in the first place that really bothers me. I think Dak deserved it. Doesn't mean it was right. That's kind of where I'm at. The old adage of, two wrongs don't make a right, I guess. And I completely agree. That is 100% the reason. Slim Davis looked good with 53 snaps. He didn't play the same number of snaps as any 3 games last season. I think, to be honest, if this was the Jordan Davis of last year, coming into that situation where you've all of a sudden got to play, nearly all the defensive snaps, or 80%, or whatever it was, he'd have probably struggled a lot more, and the Cowboys would have had a much better chance of running the ball. And they looked good as it was running the ball for a while, because the Eagles were just out of it, I think, gassed defensively. He looked really good. He held the fort really well. There were times you didn't even notice Jalen Carter's absence. There were times you were begging for him to come back and to wishing that he hadn't have done what he did. But I think that's just the nature of the game. But I think Davis will go down as one of the most underrated heroes of that game week, for the fact that you've lost your running mate, the guy that puts up all the production, that puts the glitz and the glamour on that defensive front. And you're now left with the dirty work and holding the fort. So I think Jordan Davis was exceptional in that regard, and he's not going to get the love he deserves. I hope Vic Fangio and the team notice it, because he certainly was, one of the stalwarts of that defense that just kept the Eagles alive. And it wasn't pretty, it wasn't perfect, but to negate a loss like that and to not let that, and bear in mind how close those two are, right? They're both at Georgia together. To not let that also fire you up and get you into an incident, or where you're overly aggressive and you make a mistake and you get a penalty flag, to not start jumping offside or lose your confidence or your edge or whatever it is, focus. Really, really incredible job. That's a mature, that's a growing, that's a hungry player. In comparison to what we saw from Carter, I think that contrast is night and day. And you're more than welcome, Duck. It's the least I could do. I was going to say I'll never leave you untouched, and that sounded a bit weird in my head. But you know what I mean. I'll never leave any of your comments untouched. Same with all of you. I will always do my best to make sure we get all your comments read here. As we can't leave Ty either. So best player on the defense needs to be on the field. 100% agree. So on that note, fellas, I will bid you adieu, and I will see you again on Wednesday, where we'll go a little bit deeper into the Chiefs matchup. I'll rant again about how ending this dynasty is so salivating, how I'm frothing at the bit to get a little bit hurdy-gurdy on a Sunday afternoon and just wipe out the remnants of a falling Chiefs franchise. I can't wait. I'll see you very soon, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. The Birds of 1-0. If you could leave a like on the way out of your theatre, that would be absolutely tremendous. And until next time, go Birds.